Do you think that family constellations is more of a psychological therapy, or would you say that it's a more spiritual tool?
Whether we want it or not, we're spiritual beings. Deep inside, we're all the same. We're all connected.
And I think that's why everyone can kind of like relate to it.
You know, we're talking about taking life and accepting our place in life.
Hello and welcome to the Rich and Soul podcast. I'm your host, Nati Restrepo, and today I am here with, I don't know, I think he's a primo, a long lost primo at this point. I'm here with Diego Yarawy, and you guys might have seen him. He's a transformative coach. He's on social media talking so much truth, but you've also been very recognized for your family constellations, especially in South Florida. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to finally bring this conversation on this platform. How are you feeling today during this session, primo?
I'm great, Prima. I'm so happy finally to be here, enthusiastic about, expanding our conversation, with your audience. So very happy.
Yay. Okay. So I actually had the privilege to be able to join one of your sessions, with my mom,
Yes.
which was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's so cool because, I think as a facilitator, we're kind of been in the same community in a sense, and there's so many different modalities that we can all kind of put into place. But after seeing you hold space in that dynamic, it was so clear to me how there's certain people who will find a modality and it's like as if they were literally placed on this planet to do that specific thing. And I was just telling you, like, you're like the nicest person ever. You're silly. At the same time, you're like a very grounded person. But seeing you in that session, I was like, dude, this person is meant to do that. But I feel like after I went to your session, I've been literally telling so many people, there's been so many episodes where I've already been like, yeah, like family constellations, like this. In a sense, I think before I saw it more all meshed together as ancestral healing or like karmic relationships or like, healing your mother-daughter wounds, right? Like all those type of things. But I want to hear in your own words, because every time I try to explain it to someone, they're like, what? It's like mind blowing. What is family constellations?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my teachers, he used to do, before doing his family constellations workshops, he used to have a workshop just trying to explain what family constellation, is. He was not very successful. People were more confused after that. So the best way to really understand family constellations is, just really experiencing, a session or a few sessions, because sometimes the first one, it's not enough. But in a simple way, we could say that family constellation is a systemic therapy, which means that it's a therapy, is a method that helps us to bring awareness to the unconscious dynamics with our family system. What we mean by that is that many times our results, our current life, is based on some connections with our family system. A lot of the problems that people have, or challenges or obstacles that people are experiencing, or everybody that we're experiencing, are rooted in trauma that it was not healed from our ancestors. So if our grandfather, great-grandmother, parents, they had a trauma, they had an issue, and they didn't really solve it, they didn't really heal it, you might carry that. We may carry that. And consciously, we don't remember. It's unconscious, but our body remembers. The family soul, as Bert Hellinger, the founder, call it, remembers. So we carry that information, and it's affecting us sometimes in a positive way and sometimes in a negative way. So in family constellations, we bring those unconscious dynamics to light. We bring consciousness to those dynamics so we can heal them.
Consciousness, like literally, it's so crazy. It's like some people think like when they go into a family constellation that they're going to have to do the work as if it's like a burden. And I always explain that it's not a burden. Instead, it's like a responsibility that you carry with so much grace, right? It's like, and the way that you do it, they're like, how do I work on my third eye? How do I work on the dynamic with my relationships with my family? Consciously being aware that that is a wound, right? Just by you giving it attention, I see you, you're present, I acknowledge you. That alone does so much. And you see it in the family constellation, and we'll kind of open that portal up in a bit. But, I think one of the most interesting thing about family constellations is that both it could be a very spiritual practice. Some people might see it as a very philosophical practice, a psychological, right? And I think that's why everyone can kind of like relate to it. Would you say that this form of therapy is more, well, how would you express it to someone that's like walking down the street? Maybe, he's religious or he's like, I'm not into the spiritual stuff. How would you express that?
So it's, those are just words to me because, we can talk about spirituality or science, and we're just choosing to use, particular vocabulary. But whether we want it or not, we're spiritual beings. We just call it in different ways. So sometimes when I'm talking to someone who is not aware of his spiritual or their spiritual essence, I could use different terms. So, to help them to see the possibilities to expand their awareness of their human reality. So we can talk about the unconscious, we can talk about, we could use Carl Jung's, terminology. This great psychologist that he was talking about the unconscious, the collective unconscious, which is similar to Bert Hellinger called, the family system in a way. So we can talk about the unconscious memory, or we can talk about our spiritual essence. It's the same. We're talking about a field of information that is beyond matter, that is beyond our conscious understanding. And because we don't really know where that is. We know that big part of that memory, it's in our body. But we know that it's bigger than our body. So it's somewhere that it's invisible. It's part of this field that in quantum physics we call the quantum field. It could be called in many different ways. What it's important to know in a simple way is that we are part of a bigger organism. So again, talking about the way we create our results, we can see that all of us have problems. So I will say to this person, just reflect on your problems or your obstacles or your challenges, as I like to call them, because I call them challenges because I see them as possibilities or invitations to grow. Because I know that there's this greater intelligence that is based on this kindness. So there's a kindness, there's a design that is full of kindness. So these challenges are there for a reason. And many times the reason had a purpose in our family system. For instance, let's say something that we see a lot of times in family constellations. We have the example of a great grandmother. She was in an environment surrounded by men that tried to abuse her, disrespectful men. So she developed this strategy to become defensive, and close herself to men.
Mm-hmm.
She was associating men with danger.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that's what she needed to do to survive. And those strategies of closing herself, closing her heart, closing her emotional, system, closing her mind in those moments to protect herself, were successful for her to survive during that time, right?
Yes.
And that's good. We understand that sometimes, life works in different ways, and sometimes we gotta develop those strategies. And now let's see the granddaughter of this woman. She's in a different environment, and possibly she's actually looking for the love of her life, or she's even in a relationship with a great man. But her body, her unconscious mind, or her family soul, however you want to call this field of information, where she carries the information of her system, has that association of men are equal to danger. Mm-hmm. So she's unconsciously still creating the same strategies where she's closing herself to that connection and the vulnerability with these men, because in her unconscious mind, that's dangerous. No, she doesn't know. Her conscious mind doesn't know, so her conscious mind will create stories, justify that unconscious reaction that she's unaware until she decides to see it. When she sees that, she can update, the system and kind of, okay, I understand. It makes sense that it had a purpose at some point. Now we're in a different reality. It's kind of merging those two minds, the conscious and the unconscious mind, connecting and working together. And then the healing happens, That's a simple way, you can see it. Yeah.
And I think this also goes back into like ignorance is bliss, right? Because, if you don't know any better, right? If your body's programmed to live in this state of fearing men, this is like the most common thing I bet you probably see with the women who, go to a family constellation. I always tell even my partner, I'm like, babe, you don't understand. Like women have gone through a lot of stuff, it's like the most common. He's always, he's a cinematographer. So he's like, wow, like we're sitting in a circle and he's like, my God, I didn't know that, so many women have been hurt. My younger brother, I took him to a sweat lodge once and he was like, Tati, like, what is going on? Like, I didn't know women were struggling so much, but it's that conscious, right? Even as a man, like consciously being able to see, wow, my sisters are in so much pain. And then prior to that, as they were moving through life, they don't know any better, right? You're just like, oh, well, women have gone through shit, but it doesn't really matter. But, as you were talking, I can't help but to remember, that when certain things happen, like let's say someone passed away in your life, like 10 years ago on September, 11th, right? It's like, let's talk about the Twin Towers, for example, right? Every September 11th, right? Or even on your birthday, it's like your body will remember certain things. You start to feel, you're like, I feel a little odd, right? There's something going on with me today. And then boom, you look at the calendar, like, oh snap, like 20 years ago today, I was feeling this on this day. And so I feel like that continues to get passed down through generations and generations. Also, you mentioned about, the case that you were telling me earlier before the camera started rolling. And I can't help but to think that why is it that Latinos, Hispanics, this is something that I've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed this, but why do you think Latinos love family constellations so much? Like this is like the modality that's like the entry point nowadays. Like all my aunts and all my uncles, they all know what family constellations is. They don't know about anything else, but they're like, ¿has hecho las constelaciones familiares? Like that's like, look, I don't know if it's just in Colombia or I don't know. Have you noticed that?
I mean, I see it in two different ways. Like one of them is I believe that Bert Hellinger, he did a lot
German,
of work.
Right?
He's German. He was German, and he did a lot of work in Europe, where family constellations are also very popular. But he also did some work in Mexico, in Argentina. That's why in part, that's why people Hispanic people know his work. But I also believe that it's because we are very family oriented, a culture that is very family oriented. We're all about family. And so we're aware of the importance of the family dynamics. And maybe some other cultures are not that aware, and they have more this idea that we are like independent beings,
Yes,
regardless of our family. Yeah.
With the family and I think that when it comes to even those core beliefs, and you look in, let's say in the United States, I had the opportunity to work with like a lot of American people. And that was something that I noticed, that those like core beliefs, like the good morning, thank you for having me, like those type of things weren't something so installed into them. Right. And I think that that's why Latinos tend to be very, once you do them a favor, which is why we typically go into dictatorships and into really messed up situations politically. It's because once they have somebody in power do them a favor, they are forever in debt to them. If you take a look at celebrities, Latino celebrities, let's say Juanes, right? Juanes hasn't came out with a song in like 20 years, but everybody still knows who Juanes is. They don't fall off the tracks. Juanes forever will be a celebrity that Latinos are like, you did this for me. That's it. Like you put out that one good song. You're going to be now. We're going to honor you. So with Family Constellations and like going back to like Latinos and typically Latinos being Catholic, right? The majority are Catholic Christian. What have you found with this modality being accessible to Latinos?
Yeah, I see, sometimes people have resistance because they start seeing like this is like, what type of, practice is this? This is against my religion. And, personally, anytime that I open space, I, do this type of prayer and I start calling, this, support. And I call Jesus and I call Buddha and I call, different forces and entities in a way. And I believe that some people kind of connect with this and they relax a little bit more. And also, as you know, many times I do family constellations in the same building of a church. So they're like, wow, well, they feel somehow. Some people feel more relaxed. Some others actually feel, disturbed by being into a church. But it's interesting. I always do my best to remember that, we're all spiritual beings, regardless of our beliefs or how we understand this greater intelligence. And we might get confused by the way we've been learning and how to identify or to call this force. But deep inside, many times all these religions or spiritual traditions are talking about the same thing. So when we're open to really find that common ground, you can see that we're all about the same. And deep inside, we're all the same. We're all connected, regardless of how we want to call this field, God, or organism, or intelligence, or energy. It's pretty much the same. So if somebody wants to stay in the conflict of what the symbol, what's the form, what's the word that we should use to identify this, well, that's up to them. I think that's secondary, to be. Yeah.
Would you say that, I love that you said that you do the constellations in a church and how that can sometimes be a good thing and a bad thing for people. Because I also, usually get that kind of feedback too. Sometimes, if I talk too much about Jesus, there's going to be people who are like, oh my gosh, okay, she's a Jesus lover. And then if I do, it kind of might turn some people off too. And same thing with that's why I love that you do it at the kind of church that it's an all welcoming kind of church too, which makes a huge difference.
Yes.
But I wanted to ask you do you think that Family Constellations is more of a psychological therapy, or would you say that it's a more spiritual tool?
So, it a lot of times really depends on the facilitator. Family constellations are based on 3 principles that Bert Hellinger called the principles of love. So the first principle is that everyone and everything belongs. And with that, I've seen the beauty, because that principle carries the principle of healing, carries the principle of what we're doing in this life. Because we could say that we're here to heal. We're here to integrate. We're here to find reconciliation of those places within us where we carry some resistance, some resentment, some separation, some hate, some fear that is making us feel separated or believe that we're separated or having some type of conflict internally. So in a way, we're doing here, as also many other spiritual practices tell us, like even the Course in Miracles, that it says that you are the light of the world, and your function as the light of the world is to forgive. So forgiveness in that sense, for me, it's also integration. So that's the first principle of love. Like, we're here to integrate. And I love that about Family Constellations, because also give us the opportunity to all the facilitators to bring our own touch to it, our own, it's like an art. I definitely see it like an art, because that's why I love to go and to keep on experiencing different ways with different facilitators.
Yeah.
And I've noticed in some facilitators bring more this psychological, aspect to it, which is good. But to me, it's definitely a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
And when we are aware of that, I seen the most profound changes in transformation when we are bringing it that spiritual essence. That's how Bert Hellinger definitely brought it. But he was also he was also a psychologist, so he was also aware of science, and he was bringing that connection of these two worlds that again are about the same thing from a different approach. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because when you look at someone like Brett Hellinger, right? When you look him up, I only have seen him as an older gentleman, right? And you would never think that would be this person who is spiritual, right? Which brings back this conversation where it's like, we are all spiritual. You don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to have a crystal on. You don't have to, you can make everything that you do completely. It's a spiritual experience because that's what the human experience is about. I wanted to ask you when it comes to someone coming in and being the representative, right? They might show up, let's say, in the case of my mom, right? She shows up. She's kind of like, I want to work on something, but I'm not even sure. I don't know how to put it into words. And then finally, like through like pushing and asking the right questions, right? If it wasn't for you pushing, right? Do you remember that when my mom went in and she was like, I want to work on, I don't know what I want to work on. And you had to kind of like keep on pushing and pushing. Okay, but all right, is an anxiety, but where did that anxiety come from? What do you think happens if a practitioner, let's say a facilitator, is doing a constellation and they don't ask those questions? They can't really push through, right? And I think that if the person is not with the right facilitator, they might kind of like, oh, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to showcase everything that is actually going on. So how do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah. I think that's the art of actually being able to support that container of creation that comes with different different elements. I also work as a transformative coach, what gives me, the experience. I've been doing it for about 10 years, just holding space for people and even before the family constellation. So my tool before that was just asking the right question, just holding space and bringing presence to the conversation and just noticing the energy because before Family Constellation, all my work was based more on energy, on meditation, on art therapy, mindfulness, Native American wisdom. So for me, it was all about just noticing the energy of someone and with the presence. That it's also something that Bert Hellinger was teaching. He was always referring to the empty space. He said that facilitators should be always like one feet on the empty space or in the 5D and one feet in the 3D. So that means that when we are in connection with this place of silence, then the right question, show up. Because if I do family constellations or any other healing therapy in my mind, like what unfortunately a lot of psychologists do, they go and they are looking for the answer or the question in the books that they read. And many of those books are great and they have a lot of great questions and a lot of great concepts. But it's different when we are tuning into presence, because when we're tuning into presence, our energies are connected. And then all of a sudden, if I'm able to hear that energy that we're sharing, then I'm going to have questions that my rational mind will never be able to hear. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just being there in this experience of emptying my mind and listening to the energy, to the silence that we're creating. And all of a sudden I start noticing questions and I start noticing that energy is calling us to give attention to some areas. Like all of a sudden I'm noticing something that is related to the father, to the mother, or some things that I don't know for any time they just show up. Like with anybody else, I think that's really when I'm supporting someone like a healer or a practitioner to develop their practice as well. I always encourage them to practice more, to develop more presence, because that's really what it is. It's more about being able to be there and not interfere in what's going on in that. When we're setting up a clear and a pure intention of healing, then we just should listen and allow that. Life wants to do that. Life wants to expand. Life wants to heal. That's the natural movement that is happening when we are in alignment with life. So when we set the intention and we allow it to happen, all those questions just happen like that. Sometimes it's uncomfortable and it's painful bit, but it's more for the seeker or for the representative, because sometimes we carry resistance in our minds, in our beliefs. That's what's really in the way of our health, our abundance, our love. It's just beliefs that are creating these blockages of energy. That's why Bert Hellinger was also referring to these orders of love, because he said that once we are interfering with these orders of love, we create also interference with the natural flow of love.
But has there ever been a moment where you were like, I can't get through to this person?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's mainly moments where I am not fully present. Sometimes that's when it's usually happening. It's a reflection. Let's say, at the beginning, I didn't have the discipline or the practices or the structure that I have built before a workshop or before a session. I do my best to really empty myself, because if I am full of stress, or if my body's not the best, moment, intoxicated, I've been drinking or something else, I haven't slept really good, all these different things. I haven't meditated, I haven't worked on my energy in my body. I'm not going to be in my best place, and it's going to be hard for me to be fully present. Yes. And then I'm going to have those reflections in the people that I'm working with. Yes. And so before I do a constellation or any type of work, I do my best to also set that intention, to call people that are ready to do the work. But yeah, sometimes I had, just fortunately very few people that.
Yeah, the most part people are like, I want to work on this. That's why I showed up. But yes. I can imagine that it's just that because you're in front of, well, at least this form of constellations where it's a group constellation, right? Like sometimes I'm sure it's very different when it's a one-on-one constellation. They'll tell you, te cuentan, like all the things that are going on and everything. They feel very comfortable. Like there was one person in my group that she was like, I'd rather tell you everything one-on-one.
Right. Yes.
Do you remember?
Yes, I remember that.
She's like, I'd rather tell you everything one-on-one, but I don't want to tell this group of strangers, because for those of the people who are watching that don't know how the dynamic is, it's a group of strangers, right? Yeah. And would you say that the bigger the group is, the better?
It's different, but the bigger the group, there's more energy, and it sometimes it helps the healing. Yes, it's per the improve the.
So the person goes, comes as a representative, or you can go as a representative or as a seeker.
Correct.
The seeker, is the person who will, express maybe like a situation that they're feeling in their life that they want to work on. And there he goes, asking the questions, right? Where did you start feeling this? Or, different series of things that I think can play out where this originated from, where it rooted from.
Yeah, the first thing that I tried to do with a seeker, it's first to clarify the intention. Because again, many times people come with this idea, like, I want this, I want to work on this. And many times they're not very clear, or many times it's obvious that they're kind of lying to themselves. They're kind of holding this need or this fear, and they want to work on this fear. So I'm gonna start just questioning that. Sometimes they're focused on what they want to stop. They're very focused on what they want to stop. They want to stop, and it's very hard for them to even imagine what they actually want to happen. So I'm start holding a space for them to find that, to unfold what they want. And once we have clarity on their intention, then we start bringing clarity on the elements that are influencing that situation.
The influence.
Yeah. The elements could be many things. Could be mainly family members. So we see the mother, the great grandfather, or, the uncle. It could be objects, let's say the house, money. It could be emotions. We realize that anger is connected, sadness. It could be organs, with the liver, different things. Could be symptoms. Could be many things. Could be archetypes. It's an art. We could call anything that is influencing that situation. And then we start asking the people in the group that we call them representatives to represent those elements. So they stand up once they are selected to represent these elements, and they start just tuning into the field, just allowing themselves to they bring in presence and just noticing what's happening in their bodies, and they start feeling these different sensations, emotions. Some of them say, I don't feel anything. That's sometimes everything that we just need to know. Sometimes that's a great information. See, okay, that's showing us some disconnection with this element. Or some people say, I have this tingling sensation in my finger. Wow, that's exactly, it makes so much sense. Oh my God. People start crying. And that makes a lot of sense. And really, a lot of times people say, I'm angry, I want to lay down, I want to jump, I want to run away from this person, I want to hug this person.
And they actually run away, and it's like they start to embody, right? We wouldn't say play, right? They don't play this role, right?
Exactly.
They reenact it.
Exactly. That's an important distinction, because many people understand, but I know I'm not an actor, how I'm supposed to do this. No, you don't need to be an actor, because you're not playing any role there. You're just allowing your sensations and your emotions to guide you. You're just allowing whatever you're feeling to be expressed naturally.
With those participants, right? Have you ever gotten someone that maybe they attend the constellations? Let's say in the case where I would have brought my mom, and as a representative, she didn't want to truly embody and reenact, right? She might be like, this is really weird. Like, I don't want to do that. This is cringy. Like, I can't imagine the Gen X generation, you sitting in a whole room with the Gen X generation that cares so much about like what people think. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to laugh like that. I'm not going to, even if they did feel it, they're so embarrassed of absolutely everything. So do you get that a lot?
Well, I've seen that in with other facilitators, because I make sure to open the space and to bring that presence to the room before we do it. But at the beginning, I for instance remember this moment when I was doing this men's circle, and we start doing a family constellation without like having a meditation or anything like that, just like that, because sometimes I do it like that, not that anymore, but I used to do it like that. And then I had a lot of them not really connecting with their bodies, which is a very common experience for men, for some men. And nothing was happening. Nothing was happening. So I had to kind of stop and bringing them to, bringing back to their bodies and to feel. And then things start to move. But, currently, lately, what I'm doing is just making sure that, I have that space, and I make them commit. If they want to be there, they have to commit to feel. If they don't want to do that, they're free to go. But if they're there, they're committed to feel. And we do this meditation before, where there's this, collective in the energy in the group, and we start to move. And even, people or men or anybody, sometimes they tell me after the session, like, wow, I didn't believe I could experience this and that. I never felt that much. So it's actually just that could be extra healing for some people who's been in this connection with their bodies for a while. Yeah.
It's like the dance, like being in that state, right, of your spirit being connected to your body and letting that kind of that movement, right? I think it's so interesting that you mentioned this, because this has been something that I've been thinking about too lately a lot, which is the men's thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm always telling people, I'm like, I believe that there's so many incredible men out there, so many. But I will say I struggle a bit with finding more men who want to participate in everything that we're doing. I think because I talk a lot about business, we do attract more men. I think the topic is a little bit more masculine. But in Miami especially, I don't see a lot of men wanting to develop themselves a little bit more and be around environments like this. And I don't know if it's because it goes back to, Miami being such a melting pot of cultures. What's your experience leading like these men's circles here in Miami? What have you found? Are they getting packed? Do you see a lot of men coming forward? Something that I've seen is that it's not the typical spiritual long-haired guy with a crystal. That's what I have found. But talk to me about your experience with that.
So, it's very interesting because I'm noticing like a great change in men lately, because we had this group, with some friends for the Hispanic men, Hombres de Fuego, Men of Fire, and we developed this group in 2020, and we started doing it online. And it was actually very difficult to bring men. We're struggling to bring men, and we're trying to figure out, the right marketing to it. We're figuring out what is our, the right, audience. What is the right, vocabulary we need to develop for them. We're struggling, figuring out how to connect with men. And at some point, we decided to have a break, with that work. And at the beginning of this year, I kept on doing the work, with different groups and by myself. I always, work with men on one-on-one basis. And I just, open to the men that were right. I was not very, doing too much marketing on it, but just allowing them to come to me. And I was noticing this type of men. So a friend of mine came at the beginning of this year, and he's like, we gotta bring back the men's work for the Hispanic men here in the United States. And what I say, well, if we're gonna do it, I want to do it the way I'm doing it, which is just being very open. I don't want to go to chase any man, and I don't care about that anymore. If a man is ready to come and do the work, I'm ready to do the work with them. If they're not ready to do the work, good. Just, blessings to them, but I'm not going to convince them to do any work. So I've been more open, with what we're doing, bringing the spirituality to it. I definitely see that the work we need to do in the world, it's related to being aware of our spiritual essence. We don't need to call it in any particular way or religion, but there is an essence, of being aware of that field that connects us all, that place, that state beyond, a state of beyond like the separated self, beyond individuality. There's this state, and if we're not aware of that, the ego, the selfishness, keep on ruling the world. And when we connect with this, also very interesting things happen, which also I noticed that particularly men are very interested, because also abundance, which is a very important subject for us men, it, shows up there. We start playing the game of creating abundance with different terms, with different rules. And I noticed that it's something that calls men. And also, we start bringing the awareness of our energy, which is, again, our creative energy, related to abundance, our sexual energy. So then our sexuality also transform. Our possibility to connect deeper with our partners also transform our vitality, because all that is really transforming in different ways, more effective, more harmonious, more holistic when we are doing this spiritual work.
I love it. It's so funny. I was like, how can I connect with more in tune men in Miami and South Florida? I was like, when I decided to be on this path, I could have just done what a lot of, women teachers do, which is only women. That's tends to be the thing that they do, right? And I was like, absolutely not. I have so many incredible brothers that are so on this path, and I love bringing the duality. Like when a man is in a circle with women, that figure, it's so healing, for both, right? And it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, where my brother's sitting in a sweat lodge with a bunch of women. That was healing for him and healing for the women in the circle. But recently I was on social media and I decided to search in my tool, and maybe we can even show it. I searched, just do this, search on your toolbar, on your search bar, spiritual men in Miami. You don't even want to know what comes up. Okay. It's men doing like the weirdest.
That's also, yeah, that's also important. Like, Miami, it's crowded with all these different superficial practices, and that's also something that, if someone was opening to do the work and then they connect with these superficial practices, they may believe that that's what we're doing. And there's, as one of my teachers said, there's medicine for everybody. There's medicine for confused people. There's medicine for, people that are really looking to do the work. But yeah, that's something that I noticed.
So funny. Yeah. I have to show you after what came up for me. Talking about being a man and being on this journey, okay? And, stepping up and actually taking the initiative to want to put together these circles so that more men can have access to this. You mentioned to me something when we first talked about your own journey through Family Constellations and, the path that you took through. I think you mentioned it to my mom because yes, I was asking you because my stepdad, he's an atheist. And we always say, oh man, what would it take, right, for him to kind of like experience this, right? And you were like, nah, like I actually was an atheist myself. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
And how you think that kind of led you into this world. And
yeah, it's very interesting. I've always been very passionate, about whatever it's moving me. And I used to be very passionate from my ego, for 15 years of my life, I was in hell. I was dealing with a lot of issues with addiction, severe addictions, with alcoholism, anxiety, deep depression, suicidal thoughts. And I was atheist as well. I didn't believe in anything. If someone started that conversation about spirituality or religion, that was like somebody was kind of pushing me. I was ready to go to war, and that was a fight. I did crazy things, going into church to start giving crazy speeches about, how they were manipulating you. so I did a lot of, I was definitely against that. I was like a lot in my mind trying to change the world from this revolutionary belief, from this idea of politics. And I was just putting my energy into that until I experienced God, until I experienced, the spirit, and then I just couldn't deny it. And the way I experienced that was in a plant medicine ceremony with Jahe. And that was back in 2009. And it was really beautiful. Our friend Luz Duque invited me to that ceremony.
You guys worked together, right? That's how you guys met.
Yeah, we met in our past life. We call it our past life. We were doing soap operas. I was in the crew. She was, one of the extras there, actresses there. And in our past life, we were drinking, smoking, behind the scenes, doing crazy stuff. And all of a sudden, she's appeared, and I was like, oh, she's not even answering the phone. And after several months, she came back, and we just connect, and she's completely different. She's loose now, and she's like, what happened to you? And she's like, I experienced plant medicine. And she started inviting me to that, and I was like, really having a lot of issues accepting it. But I ended up, saying yes to the experience. In that ceremony, it changed my life. That was the first really deep breakthrough that I had in my life. Because in that ceremony, that plant medicine, for the ones that don't know, it's a really beautiful sacred space to bring a lot of awareness to your spiritual essence. In a way, in a practical way, we could say that in that ceremony, in those ceremonies, you raise the volume of your inner dialogue so you can become more aware of what's happening in your inner world. I'm sure that most of us can agree that we create our reality based on our beliefs, our conscious or unconscious belief. If we hold those beliefs, we create our reality. And with those medicines, we can hear what's happening unconsciously there. So we can also bring to light those unconscious beliefs. And that's what happened with me in this ceremony, because before that, I used to blame, the government, my parents, my girlfriend, my dog, my neighbor, everyone, that the world was a crisis because of everyone else. My life was terrible because of everyone else. And I was kind of, in this role or this identity of the rebel that, a lot of artists, hold, that we believe that as artists that our role is to be a critic of the society. I used to like a lot of, grunge music like Nirvana, Kurt Cobain. So I was pretending to be this musician that is a rebel. I was writing music about how the world sucks, and my responsibility is to point out, the craziness of the world. I was watching a lot of movies and writing movies about, like the film noir, this kind of detective that is he doesn't belong to society, but he's just criticizing society. And I was reading a lot of, these crazy books like, Charles Bukowski, it's a great author. He has a few great poems that I still like, but, his philosophy is the same thing. Is this drunk person that is just criticizing the world. So I was in that personality. And the first thing that I noticed in this ceremony is that by holding a space, by cultivating these beliefs, I was creating my, crazy reality, the hell that I was living in. So
would you say that it was death?
It was a death, experience. Definitely, I was huge transformation to me, like physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I mean, completely different experience of life after one night. So for some time, I stopped doing anything related to art because I thought that art was killing me. And it was the type of art that I was doing. And I start connecting with, spirituality. I would start exploring what the heck is what I experienced, because I experienced that energy, that connection with everything. It was not just like reading about it. I was experiencing it. And, some people might believe that this is like being high with drugs. But it's different, when with these sacred plants, it's a real experience. It's like you're opening your awareness to different realms that are always there, but sometimes we're just, so close, minded. Our consciousness is so limited that we're not aware of those. Well, we could access those places without medicine. We could access those places with meditation and with, breath work, different practices. But medicine, that sacred medicine is one of them that help us with that process. So after experiencing the connection with everything, I just couldn't go back. So I start, developing.
You couldn't go back.
Yeah. I took the pill. I took the pill, the Matrix, and then that's
still
it.
Going back after that.
Yeah.
I want to. This was a question that I wanted to ask you before. I know we're like running out of time, and I know we'll have to do like a part 2 or something, because I think we can. This is such a family constellations is so complex, and it's so much. I love that it's so much fun, that it's actually a fun thing to participate in, and so deep and so therapeutic and so intense at the same time. Like, you leave burnt, like. But I wanted to ask you, when it comes to, have you experienced maybe a guest or a client that is adopted in doing family constellations, and how does it look?
Yes. Yeah. We actually, I think yesterday we have someone that it was adopted. Yes. I had that different times. So the process with them, it's, in a way, first they have to recognize their parents, because
even if they haven't met their parents,
they haven't met their parents, energetically, biologically, they're still connected with that system, with those systems, the father and mother system. So the body and the soul knows. So by not bringing awareness of them, it's like they're rejecting their parents. So if anybody's rejecting their parents, they're rejecting life. You cannot fully accept your place in life if you're not accepting your parents. It's impossible. It's like if you're a leaf in this tree, but you're not accepting the place where you are, because you, in a way, you think that you're there. you're not really opening to everything that is available to you.
Would you say that it's kind of like it works the same way for that individual who's like, I have these family members that I want nothing to do with? It's the same way as someone who's adopted.
It's similar. It's similar, yeah, because it's a rejection. It's a rejection. Sometimes it's difficult because mentally, and a lot of even psychologists will, tell these stories to them, so they really disconnect from their parents, believing that because of they're at peace. They even say a lot of times, "No, I'm at peace with them. It's okay. I already forgave them." But that's in their minds, in their rational minds. When we see their bodies in the unconscious mind, we see a wound there because they're not fully accepting their place in the system, their place in life, and that's creating a lot of problems. I'm remembering this case of this man who was adopted, and he was being, successful in many areas of their life because he had the blessing of actually having a very beautiful family that adopted him, and he developed all these beautiful, healthy habits. But deep inside, there was this emptiness. He was always carrying this experience that he couldn't be fulfilled by all the success, the beautiful family that he had, until he acknowledged their biological parents. After he did that, he had this breakthrough, and everything started to flow in a different way.
Wow. Yeah, that's so cool. Okay. Last question. I ask this question to every single person who comes on the podcast. What would you say makes your soul rich?
What make my soul rich? Just the awareness of life. I think that, we're talking about taking life and accepting our place in life. I notice that anytime I'm fully here and I'm aware of the deep essence of life within me, I experience this, expansion and explosion of life that makes my life, bright.
Awareness means so in tune. I love it. I love it. Diego, where can people find you? Where can people sign up for a constellation? Do you online, or do you have to live in Miami? Like, we need to bring this worldwide to people.
Yes, definitely. So I do family constellations in person in different places. I'll do a lot of them in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, but I also travel sometimes. I've done it in different states, in different countries. And the best way to find me, it's in my Instagram, Diego Yarawy. And I could also do family constellations online. I could do it in groups or one-on-one online. It's equally effective and powerful. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Primo, for coming on and for sharing your wisdom. Had so much fun chatting with you. And you're definitely a book of information. Like, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask Diego, just drop them down in the comments. And man, I think it would be so cool if we did family constellations on a retreat.
Yes, for sure. Yes, that's beautiful.
So I'm gonna plot, guys. Drop down there what you guys are thinking when I say that. So we'll make it happen. Thank you, Diego.
Thank you, Nati. Thank you, Prima. It was a pleasure. I enjoy our conversation. Let's keep on expanding it. Yes.